Hello, everyone. Sorry for the late streaming today. We were again experiencing some technical glitches, but all well today. So, first of all, I'm really happy today that we are having an amazing session today. And for today, we are going to talk about end-to-end Microsoft Fabric CI/CD from feature development to production. Before going into the speaker bio, just everyone, let us know from which part of the world you all are joining. And I know people in the UK are having a pretty good heat wave. We have got scorching 37 degrees here. So I would love to hear from other parts of the world how the weather is, how are people joining, and from which part of the world. So, just to give a quick introduction to today's speaker. So, today we are happy to invite our speaker, Edinson Medina, who is a senior cloud solution architect at Microsoft. And he has got over 20 years of experience and specializes in leading strategic initiatives for data and AI, empowering organizations to achieve their goals by focusing on addressing complex challenges with innovative strategies and implementing solutions that deliver sustainable success. So let's invite Edison to the stage. Hi, Edison.
Hey
How are
everybody.
you?
Yeah, good. You hope everybody's
Yeah.
having a nice day. Probably a hot day, but yeah.
Yes, yeah, like yourself in UK, we are having a heat wave today. So yeah,
Yeah.
definitely hot, very hot, 36 degrees today. A fan in my background keeping me a little cooler. But yeah, I think it will stop working in some time because it's way too hot. But yeah, Edison, I will give the stage to you. So yeah, we look forward to this amazing session. We have got audiences already joining us from different parts of the world. So good luck to you. And yeah, let's go ahead with the session.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Yes, so hi everybody. My name is Edinson Medina. I'm a senior cloud solution architect working for Microsoft UK. I'm gonna be talking to you today about Microsoft Fabric CI/CD end-to-end. All right, how can we go ahead and do our end-to-end CI/CD solution for Microsoft Fabric to be able to deploy our items through our usual uh, different environments like development, testing, QA, pre-production, production. Right. So that's the idea for today's session. Um, it's likely that if you're here, you already know what Microsoft Fabric is, but of course, let's just do a brief introduction in case you don't. So Microsoft Fabric is just a unified end-to-end analytics platform that is, the idea is to consolidate a lot of different services all under one umbrella. You have a lot of different workloads like Data Factory, things like Data Factory pipelines or data flows to move data from one point to the end, and also doing transformations. You have analytics workloads like notebooks, lake houses. You'll have databases, the more traditional databases like SQL Server, but also distributed databases or document databases like Cosmos DB. You have real-time intelligence workloads for streaming data, also data that comes from CDC as well. It's not only for streaming data with event houses, KQL databases, and event stream. You also have Power BI, all right, for you to create your semantic models and your reports, and also newly ontologies and IQ, all right, all within one platform, all within one lake, all right, for all of your data. It's going to be stored in one lake, all with the same governance, right? So that's the idea of Microsoft Fabric, to have that unified platform, right? Then within Fabric, we'll have a lot of different components, right? We have the Fabric tenant, all right, which is going to be everything for within that Fabric tenant, within that Fabric account. But then you'll have to be able to provide the compute power, all right, that Fabric tenant is going to have. And that is going to be done by a capacity, all right? In this case, you can have multiple capacities. You're not required to only have one capacity. For example, I have capacity A and capacity B, and it's quite useful or quite useful in customers seeing that they have different capacities for different environments. Like you have a capacity for development and testing, and then another one for production, or also there are situations where you might decide I want to have a capacity for a specific project that cannot have any noisy neighbors, for example, or you want to foolproof all of the workloads that are going in that capacity. And then within those capacities, you'll have workspaces and items, right? Because workspaces is your main unit of your main logical unit within Fabric or main unit of work. And within that workspace, you'll have different items for different workloads, as I mentioned before. for example, a data pipeline that moves data from a SQL Server into Fabric, into one lake, and then on top of that, I'm gonna go land it into a lake house, and then I go through my medallion architecture using notebooks to do transformations, and then it lands into the gold layer in a data warehouse maybe, and then from there, I go and use a semantic model for the on top of those dimensions and fact tables that I may have in that data warehouse. I create my semantic model, and then on top of that, I'll have my report, right? Uh, but then what we're going to talk about today is, all right, so now that I have this, how do I make sure that I do the deployment of all of those items without really human intervention, right? Because you want to do all of this in an automated fashion and move your items across environments from development to testing to QA to production with the least or with no manual intervention in reality. So what can we do for that? And that's where DevOps comes in, right? So because what is DevOps? It's just the union of people, processes, and different products to be able to provide continuous delivery, continuous value to your end users. And the idea for this is that you want to do it on multiple different increments of code improvements or code or value through code, and it's all executed automatically until you can produce value. There's a lot of things, of course, that cover DevOps, but we'll focus mainly on the CI/CD part, right? In the continuous integration and the continuous development. Continuous integration is all about how can I, as a developer, do small changes of code that have been assigned to me if I follow an agile methodology where I've been assigned a user story with different tasks associated with that user story. How can I then start implementing those features aligned to the task that I have to execute in a small incremental code changes? But it's not just me on the team. There's multiple developers in that team. So how can we also work in conjunction, in parallel, right? And doing frequent merging into a stable branch, which in this case we're going to call the main branch, right? So that's the continuous integration part. But then once I have that, once I have all those changes, right, going and fluently going into that stable main branch, then how does that get deployed into my other environments, right? Because I still need to then now move this into my test environment where I'm going to go and start executing tests, maybe some manual tests or maybe some automated tests as well, right? And then once all of that passes, how then does it land into the production branch and in the production environment, right? That's where the continuous deployment comes in, all right? Which is about all delivering that solution in short, frequent, automated and repeatable cycles, which is the important part, to be deployed through one single process. So that's what CI and CD is. And then what are the features then that we have for this in Fabric, right? Well, there's a few things that we have. First, we have a built-in Git integration. So all of your workspaces are able to connect and to a Git repo, right? That that lives either in Azure DevOps or in GitHub, right? Those are the only two providers that we support today. So it allows you to synchronize that, have that synchronization between all of the items that exist in your workspace into a repository, all right? That is in DevOps or in GitHub. There's also other features, and of course, one of them is going to be variable library. Variable library is going to become really, really important when we talk about parameterization, right? Because as you know, depending on the environment that I exist, things are not exactly going to be the same. For example, connections, right? If I have a data pipeline that ingests data from a SQL server, yeah, maybe in the development and test environment, I connect to a server that is in development or in test, but in production, I need to connect to the production database, right? And in that case, I need to make sure that as I move across the environments, I always connect to the correct connection. And it's all, how can I do this without having to do anything manual to change that connection? How can I go ahead and parameterize that, right? So variable libraries is one of the ways that you can do that, although we'll also talk about something else later. Deployment pipelines as well, right? So it's one of the features that exists within Fabric, all right? So it comes from the Power BI days, and allows you to really deploy items from one environment to the other environment, being in this case attached to a workspace. So you attach them from the development workspace into the test workspace, into the production workspace, and so on. Allows you to do that. It's all quite UI driven, right? It's really simple to use. It's good to use, and it's actually been having a lot of improvements, right? But the fact is that it's gonna be limited up to a point. So it's not gonna allow you to do um, a lot of complex scenarios. Like, I don't know, you want to introduce automated testing, or you want to deploy a SQL schema, all right, on the way, all right? So it doesn't allow you to do that. So it doesn't really handle a lot of complex situations. And that's why we want to talk about Azure DevOps as well, and how do we bring that into the mix, or GitHub as well. Now, the other one is going to be the REST API. So in reality, everything that we can do on the UI, most of it we can do through the REST API, and we're going to leverage it heavily because it's really what we're going to use, not directly, but through some of the tools that we're going to talk about. Is what is going to be used on the background to deploy something, all right? So rather than us having to create it manually, we'll use a Fabric REST API code to say, please go ahead and deploy this semantic model, this report, right? You could also use the REST API, but there's tools that can do that for you. For example, you have the Fabric CLI and the Fabric CI/CD package, which are both automation tools that allows you, one, to do Fabric CLI is more directed to automation, right? Creation of a workspace, running a pipeline or a notebook or a Spark job, configuring permissions, right? So it's all about how can I automate certain activities. The Fabric CI/CD package is just about CI/CD. It's about taking items from one environment and move it to the next environment. That's what the Fabric CI/CD package is. In the background, they both use the Fabric REST API but it's all just from the get-go, right? You also have a Fabric Terraform provider. It's also quite useful. A lot of customers love Terraform, which is because it's really useful. There's a provider for Fabric that you can also use. Again, in the background, also uses the Fabric REST APIs. As I said before, the supported Git providers are Git in Azure repos or GitHub, all right, or GitHub Enterprise. Those are the only Git providers that we allow to actually do synchronization between all of the items that we have in the workspace into a repo. So continuous integration in Fabric, right? So the idea for continuous integration or doing that synchronization with Git is about getting version control for all of the workspaces items that we have in there. Make sure that we can collaborate because we can create our own Git branches. So we can create feature branches that a developer will use to do a configuration or do a change or work on a feature. So it's all collaborative. You will synchronize everything that happened from the workspace into the Git repo and vice versa as well, because anything that you do also on the Git repo will also have to be updated into the workspace. And you can, this integration will preserve both workspace folder structure. It's going to track all of the changes that you do. You have a commit history. You also have a merge resolution built into it for you to be able to resolve any conflicts that you may have. The setup is quite simple. You just go. You need to be, of course, in a Fabric capacity. So this doesn't work for like a workspace that you have in a Pro license or a Power BI premium per user, or even in a, I think even in a peace queue might not be in there as well. It has to be a Fabric capacity. You do have to have a few tenant switches enabled. Of course, the user must be able to create items. The user also needs to have the right to synchronize workspaces items with the Git repository. And if you want to branch out, if you want to do the branch out process, the user needs to also be able to create a workspace, right? There are some changes coming into this in the roadmap where it's going to make these things easier, but I'll wait for that to be announced before I'll talk about that. I'll talk also more about the branch out process as I showed you the demo. So then what is about the deployment process, all right? So what is the deployment process for continuous integration? How does it work? What is the traditional way that any developer works, right? Especially in DevOps. we start from a release branch or a main branch or an stable branch where the code is stable, and then whenever a developer needs to implement a new feature, wants to do a change, they start by let's create a feature branch. All right, from that, let's create a copy of that release branch into a new feature branch. I'll do my changes. That in this case, because it's Fabric, of course, it's gonna get synchronized to a feature workspace. We do the changes in Fabric. Let's say we change a data pipeline, right? We add a new source. We do that change. Those changes will get committed into that feature branch. And once that is in that feature branch, it's now time to do the pull request, right? The usual pull request process, which is about let's merge the changes that we have into this feature into the main stable branch. Somebody, of course, have to review the changes. And if you're using GitHub, you can use Copilot to actually help you a lot around for doing the pull request review, right? So this is the usual process that you follow through your CI process, right? And then when that happens, right? Once you do follow the CI process, it's now then the part of the time of CD. So let's suppose we have gone and all of my changes have been approved, of all of the changes that I've made into the pipeline have been approved, and now it's merged into my main branch, into my that release branch. And now it's time for us to deploy this through different environments. Now, this is going to be, there's a few different approaches that can be taken from this. I'm going to use a Git flow approach where I have a branch for development, a branch for test, a branch for production. But you can also follow a trunk-based approach where basically from your main branch deploy to every environment as well. Both are possible. It really depends on your expertise and the policies that you follow in your organization. But that's the CD part, right? Where I go ahead and then once my changes have landed into my individual environment branch, in development branch or test branch or the prod branch, for example, then I have to deploy this to the workspace, right? To the relevant workspace attached to that branch. Now, for this, we're not going to use Git, right? We're going to use, in this scenario that I'm going to show you, we're going to use the Fabric CI/CD Python module using Azure DevOps pipelines. We could have as well used GitHub and use GitHub Actions as well, but in this case, I've decided to use Azure DevOps with Azure DevOps repos and an Azure DevOps pipeline on it, right? So the key here is that, as I said, the deployment from that branch, from those files that I have, those items that I have in my repo, is going to happen through the Fabric CI/CD Python package, right? So that's the main utility that we're going to use on that. And I'll show you all of this on a demo. So what does the Fabric CI/CD Python package is? So by the way, this came from the community, all right? So this started as a project within one of the internal group in Microsoft, but it has about 2-3 months ago has been adopted by the product group for the Fabric product group as well. So, and the Fabric CI/CD is just a Python library that provides a wrapper for the REST API calls. So rather than us having to write all of the API calls, if I want to deploy a lakehouse, all right? So okay, let's do the post API to do that. No, it should just say no, just get this from my repo, all right? So go ahead and read this for all of the folders that I have in my repo. Read that because you understand that it's just files in JSON, and then go ahead and send that through an API to my target workspace, the development workspace, for example, and create the items, all right? That's what the Fabric CI/CD does. So it really helps us to create a reusable library that implements this release process and deploys also not just the items. If I have a folder structure, it will deploy that as well. It's all built in, and it's all handled by the code through that Fabric CI/CD. And it only takes, I don't know, like maybe 10 lines of code in the most simplistic version for it. So again, open source, is Python-based. It wraps around all of the Fabric REST API. It's really simple to configure. It does support parameterization, all right? And I will show you this, all right? So there is a way that you can use a parameter file to start to do a find and replace for a specific values or parts of an item that you want to replace depending on what environment you are on. Authentication supports Azure token credentials, so it supports user, SPN, managed identity, workspace identity as well. It supports pretty much any Azure token credential authentication. It's debuggable, so because you can enable debuggability, I actually have it enabled in my demo, so we can see what the Fabric CI/CD Python module is doing. So the main thing is all about, of course, being a Python package. And when you want to install it on a runner, you do your the pip install to install the Fabric CI/CD library, and then you just do the configuration. You import the different methods that you're going to use, and then you define which is a target workspace that you're going to deploy all of the items to by providing the ID, the repository directory, where I'm going to read where my items exist in my branch, and also which items are going to be in scope for the deployment. Because you might say, I don't want to deploy all of the items. I only want to focus on deploying a notebook, the data pipelines, and the environment items, for example. And then you'll publish that, and they will publish into the target workspace, and anything that doesn't exist on that will get unpublished. So it will just not be, it will be unpublished from the workspace. You could run it manually if you wanted to, for example, from VS Code, but in this case, we're going to use Azure DevOps pipelines for this. So parameterization, right? So I talked about parameterization. How do we go ahead and do a parameterization through the Fabric CI/CD module? So it supports a file that's called the parameter.yml file that you will have to place in the same root folder where all of your Fabric items exist, right? And then once you do that, that parameterization file is really a really simple find and replace, right? So imagine Notepad. So you have a bunch of things, you do Control H, and then you say, please, I want you to find this value, right? So the information for the dev workspace are having here. And when you're in test, I want you to replace it with the test workspace ID and the test Lakehouse ID. When you're in prod, you have to replace it with prod workspace ID and the prod workspace. So you do that simple kind of search for this and replace it for this other value, right? So that is the idea around the find and replace in for Fabric CI/CD. So now I'm going to go ahead and move into the demo. Let me just bring my other board down. All right. Is there any questions that you may have? I could take maybe one or two questions.
So, Edison, we haven't got anything yet, but we got one comment from Rob Carroll that Fabric CI/CD is fantastic.
Thanks, Rob.
Yeah, so I think I'll keep an eye on the questions coming through and let you know if there are any.
That's good. All right. So I have my repo in here that is called UK Fabric User Group. I have a few branches. So I have a development branch. I have a feature branch that I already have in here. I have Fabric as well. So how do all of these work, right? So of course, because it's a demo, I wanted to create a few things beforehand. Just because right here, I have a workspace that I'm using for doing the branch out process. I'll talk to you about what the branch out process is in a second. And then I have my development workspace, right? I have my test workspace and have my production workspace. This is just the setup that I like, especially for demos, because it's easy to explain. It's not necessarily the way that you will do it on your organization, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is, how do I do the Git connection, right? Because that's probably where we're going to start from, doing that initial Git connection. So I have the main workspace that is Git connected. And you can see, because I can see the source control in here, right? And you can see because I can see this source control in here. And then synchronization option. So Git integration option in this project, this Git repo specifically. Now, this means that I'm going to put. This is something that I do advise you do. All right. Do not put them on the root folder. All right. So do create a folder where you go ahead and okay, okay. Looks I had a blip there. So when you do create a folder where you go ahead and store all of your Fabric items under that folder. It's going to be much more simpler to manage. And then in this case, it's connected to my main branch. When I go to the main branch, you will see a Fabric folder, and then in this Fabric folder, I have a new feature. Okay. Sorry, I saw a few blips on the screen. So, all right, I've been assigned a task that I need you, Edinson, to create, modify the data pipeline that we have in production. So, but also I need you to create a semantic model, and I need you to create a Power BI report, right? So that's my task. So how do I start? Well, the first thing I want to do is I need to create my feature branch. And that I will do through a branch out process. Again, there's multiple ways that you can do this, because I could do the branch out from DevOps and then just synchronize that through a workspace that I create, for example. But I like doing it this way, where I go to my source controls, I'm in my stable branch, I come into the branching process, and then if I click in here, I have this branch out to workspace. What this will do is pretty much it's going to create a new workspace that is going to get attached to a new branch that is going to get created, and then synchronize the two. That's pretty much everything that you have to do. And you can also now, although still in preview, you can actually even select individual items, which could be really important, especially if there are any kind of dependencies between items that you might have there that are not being honored correctly. All right. So in those cases, you might say, all right, let me do it individually. Let me first do the lake house, because that's where my tables are, and then after that, I'll add the warehouse, because my views depend on the lake house, right? So I need to do it that way, right? So it might become important in those situations. In this case, I already have one, because it does take some time. It may take about 2 minutes, so I don't want to just staring on the screen for that. So I've created a new workspace that is attached to a branch that is called Lab Feature Test, and then in here, right, I have my deployment. So I need to do some changes, right? The first thing I'm going to do is, well, I'm going to check my notebook just to have a look at this. I'm going to do a small change into this notebook. My computer is suffering from heat as well.
In the meantime, Edinson, your machine is working up. I think there's a question that has come up in case you want to take that.
Mm-hmm.
So the question comes
What?
from, and the question is, what happens to the feature workspace after merging to release? Do you clean it up?
So you will have to clean it up manually, all right? But yes, that would be the idea, all right? So the idea is that these feature workspaces that you create that are connected to this feature branch, they should be short-lived, all right? So that basically means that you want to go ahead, create that, do your development, and then after the development is done, then you want to go ahead and clean that up, right? And then when you want to work in the next feature, right, then you want to work with a new feature branch and a new feature workspace. So yeah, you have, but it doesn't happen automatically. You'll have to clean it up manually.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, so it doesn't look like my notebook wants to play. So let me see if maybe I can create something new. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a new notebook. So I'm gonna come in here, gonna create a new notebook. All right, just gonna call it notebook one. Sorry about this. Well, what that thinks, I'm also
I think
gonna show
it's
you the parameter file, right? So the other thing that you may have to do is, as I said, do parameterization, right? And then the parameterization is in this case. So I have this, as you can see, the feature branch. I'm connected to it, and there's a few things in here, all right, that I want to discuss, and because I will show you this, all right. Uh, right now, I want to show you. Actually, let me start with the pipeline, all right. So as I said, all of my deployments is actually going to happen through an Azure DevOps pipeline, right? I already have the pipeline in here. I've already also have it as a pipeline in Azure DevOps, right? Uh, and the pipeline right here is this is just the most simplistic one. As you can see, I have a lot of other things, a lot of other stages that we can go through if we have time. But right now, it's about how can I just deploy the Fabric items, right? So the deployment for the Fabric items, is actually done by this piece in here. The first thing I do is I go ahead, I do a pip install for the Fabric CI/CD Python module, and then I add a Python task to run that Fabric CI/CD. I actually have it, or I'm gonna use it through a Python file that I already have. I'll show you in a second, and I pass the arguments for. In this case, I'm passing the arguments for authentication because in my case, I'm using an SPN to do the authentication against Fabric.
sorry,
To do
Edison.
yes.
I think audiences are having a problem in looking what the screen is showing. Can you zoom in a little bit,
Oh
please?
yes, absolutely. Uh, Actually, can I zoom in VS Code? Don't know how to zoom in VS Code actually. Uh, if I do Control Shift, no, doesn't want to do it. View. I don't think I'm not sure how to zoom in into VS Code. It's full screen.
I think someone just said Control
Uh,
plus.
Control plus. Yeah, can see it. Okay. And Control plus. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
think
So
that's yeah. Let us know, guys, if it's visible. If not, yeah, we can zoom in more. Thank you. Thanks, Edison.
no worries. So then I have the pipeline, right? So as you can see, I am gonna show you the Python file in a second. But the arguments that I'm passing is authentication. I'm using an SPN. The SPN is being stored on a key vault in my Azure subscription. So all of that I'm gonna access through variable libraries in DevOps. I'll show you in a second. The other part argument that I pass is the items that I want to actually deploy, right? Because I may not want to deploy all of them. This is just a parameter that I have in here. In this case, I'm gonna do notebooks, pipelines, lighthouses, semantic models, and so on, right? I also pass what is my target environment, right? Where is it gonna deploy? I'm gonna start, of course, with development, but then I'll move into test and production. And also, if I have a warehouse, also the warehouse name if I want to deploy a warehouse. Um, All right, so that is my YAML. As I said, there's many more stages down below that you can use, but let's see if we have time for that. So the actual Python file, all right. So I have a lot of pieces in here because I'm doing a lot of automation to get like the workspace ID and to get lakehouse and warehouse names and so on. So I have a few functions for that. They're really not needed, right? So the main thing, and then I'm parsing the arguments, and then I'm just building the variables to get what I need. But at the end of the day, what I really just need is response, set variables, this here, right? This is really what I need, right? Say, I want to use the Fabric CI/CD module for the Fabric workspaces. I want to do the deployment to this workspace ID. So this is going to be, depending if it's step, it's going to show me the ID for the workspace ID for the development workspace, or if it's a prod, another ID, and so on. All based also in the target environment, if it's going to be dev, test, or prod. I need to pass the repository directory because, as I said, all of my items that are git synced, they're within the Fabric directory. So I will pass that Fabric directory here. I'll define which items I want to deploy, and of course the token that I'm using to authenticate. So I created the token up there at the beginning, and then I'm passing the token to do the authentication. So that's pretty much everything that we do on the Fabric CI/CD module, and then all of that. All right, so Fabric is just not playing with me today. So let me just try to come back to this. So all of that, I've created, or the YAML pipeline, I've created a pipeline in here that is called UK Fabric User Group. If I edit this, you can see it's pretty much the same pipeline that I showed you on VS Code, right? As I said, I've also using variable libraries. So I have some information that I pass, some non-sensitive information that I pass in here, like my workspace names and that Fabric folder name, for example. But I also have some other information that is secure, that is actually connecting to a key vault, right, to get all of this information from key. Right? So that's with that. So that is the pipeline. Now, the other thing really important with the pipeline is I have a trigger, right, that tells me this pipeline must run anytime I make a change to my development branch, to my test branch, and my production branch. So that means when I make a change to this, because I'm deploying new things from Fabric into these branches, the pipeline is going to run. It's going to pick up all of the new items or whatever the changes I'm doing, and then push them into the Fabric workspace, right? Which the Fabric workspace, in these cases, is going to be the development one, the test one, and the prod one, right? So let me see now if this wants to play ball with me. Okay, so it did create a notebook, all right, so that's good. Let me just see if I can actually come in and then make a change into this other notebook that I have in here. By the way, the Fabric CI/CD, I'll show it to you in a second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to print hello from the Fabric CI/CD lab in the UK user group, for example. So I'm going to wait this for it to be safe, and then I'm going to close it. I'm also gonna change maybe the pipeline. I'm doing time. Yeah, I have time.
Sorry, Edinson. Can we zoom in as well
Yeah,
again here
let me
on the
zoom
Fabric
in.
screen,
Yes,
please? Thank
sorry
you
about
so
that.
much.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and then make a small change in here. I'm gonna add like something trivial, like a wait activity. So I just added that wait activity here. Just gonna save this. And then what I'm going to do is, I'm just gonna do these two changes, all right, just to not abuse my luck with the internet issues that I'm having. And then what I'm gonna go ahead is I'm gonna push the changes, right? So I've made the changes in my feature branch. I'm happy with that. So I'm gonna push the changes now into my feature branch, right? So the new notebook, the the change that I make in my other notebook and the change in my pipeline. So I'm gonna commit this. You do have the option to commit to a new branch, not what we're looking for right now, but you do have that option in there. So I'm just gonna commit this. Okay. So the changes have now been committed. So which means that if I just go ahead and come to my repos, right? I will see, you can actually see it from here. Hey, there's been an update for this feature test branch. Do you want to create a pull request? I do want to create a pull request, all right? And now it's the time where, all right, we've done the change. Of course, the first thing, I'm gonna make this, so merge feature to development. Of course, I will create this. You can see it. You can see the files that I have changed in here and so on. I will create this. Oh, of course, somebody else will have to come in, will have to review these changes that I've made, will have to approve. Of course, because this is a demo, I'm going to approve my own changes. You should never be able to do that. But in this case, we're going to go ahead and do that, right? So I have my changes. I'm going to complete this. I'm going to do a merge type. Also, I could do a squash commit, and then I'm just going to complete the merge. And then, because I'm merging this into the development branch, right? What did I say? I had a trigger for that, right? So now if I go to my pipelines, my UK user group, right, is running, right? So I come in here, I see my deployment, right? So you can see that it's right now, it's set up the environment, it got my secrets and so on. It's setting up CI/CD, and then now it's gonna start to actually run the deployment. So now it's using CI/CD, the Fabric CI/CD module, to actually execute the deployment from my branches, from my files that I have in my dep branch now, because that it's been merged, right? It's been merged from the feature branch into my merge branch. So I have those files in the development branch. It's going to pick all of that up and then deploy them into my development workspace, which I've already identified, right? So, for example, if I see here, I can connect to this first. The first thing it's going to do is going to validate because it noticed, oh, you have a parameter file. Let me just validate that that's correct. All right, so now let me just start publishing any workspaces folders if you have any folders. And then I'm gonna go ahead and do the warehouse. I noticed you have a warehouse, so I'm gonna go ahead and publish that. I noticed you also have a lakehouse or a few lakehouses, so I'm gonna go ahead and publish those. Then also any publishing of lakehouse shortcuts. I don't have any shortcuts actually, but I do have that feature enabled. So that's a setting that you have to enable in the Fabric CI/CD script that I had. I have it enabled to publish shortcuts as well. But it's something that you have to enable as a feature flag. And then did the notebooks and so on, all right? So it went ahead and did all of it. It was all successful. So that means that when I come now into my development workspace, right? And remember, this is not Git connected, right? So there is no Git connection anywhere in here, right? This should have the changes, all right? Well, you can see I have notebook 1 in here. I didn't have it before. If I click in here, I should have hello from the UK user group, right? Which I didn't have before. So that is what Fabric CI/CD is all about, right? It's all about getting the changes from those items that I have in my repo, and then just publishing them into the relevant workspace that I've typed to all of this. It's also actually done parameterization, right? Why? Because before, in my feature test, if I go to my notebook, you can see up here, right? I telling, hey, notebook, you need to connect to, whenever you're going to execute, I want you to connect to this lakehouse in this workspace ID and in this lakehouse ID, which in reality is this lakehouse that I have in here, right? Now, if I go to the one that is on the development workspace, which is this one, right? Those are different, right? So you can see that this ends on B61, the workspace, and this workspace ends on 804, right? Same with the lakehouse, right? Because of the parameterization. So I went ahead and remember that I have this parameter file. I told it before, hey, if you find something for the works, if you find this workspace ID, right? That is the workspace ID for the feature workspace that I'm working with. I need you to replace it with the workspace ID for the, if you're working with development, get the workspace ID for the development workspace, get that, and put it in here. So the nice thing about the Fabric CI/CD is that it actually already have a lot of these values already parameterized as a variable that I can just use. So, and all of this comes, so when I executed this, it's picking. So whenever I run this, run the deployment, it's gonna pick up. All right, yeah. Let me get the workspace ID, and then I'm gonna use it as a variable later that I can use for the parameter file. All right. So that's pretty good. And again, so all of these, everything that I'm showing you in here is in here in the documentation, right? You can see what is supported, what is not supported. This is the basic example. Also, if you go to the how-to, you will see parameterization in here. I will take you through how do you do the parameterization as well. There's many ways to do the parameterization. There's a few. There's also a key value replace rather than find and replace, which is different. You can really go a bit deeper on this piece. All right, so that's it, right? So that's me done with development. So now let's get to the other environments, right? So I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna go to my create another pull request, and actually let me just show you just to prove, right? Just close some of this stuff. I'm gonna go now to my test environment. In the test environment, right? So I don't have that other notebook. If I click here on my ingestion a pipeline, right? It's also not gonna have the weight or anything. So let's just make sure when I run this time so that I've shown it to you before. So I'm just gonna go ahead and say I'm gonna create a new pull request. I want to go from development into my test branch. You can see all the files. I'll create this. You can see, oh, I have a few merge conflicts. That's good. I'm gonna have to fix those merge conflicts. I was doing a few bits before the call. Just fix these merge conflicts. Let me see what I have in here. Okay, so I want the weight. Okay, so this is the, so this has deleted this. This is the warehouse. This is the workspace ID. Okay. So I want to take all source files, which is the left. Take source left. Yeah. The left, yes. Okay. So I have all of that. I fixed my conflicts. So now I'm just going to complete this. So the pipeline is going to run again. In this case, it's going to run for test. While this run, happy to take any questions as well.
Yes, we do have few questions that have come through. So one question that came from Jake Judy is, do feature workspace have the same config as the source workspace, like networking
That's
and permissions?
Yeah, that's a great question. It doesn't. All right. So actually, when you do the branch out, I probably did not stress on that. So when I come in here, yeah, that's fine. When I go into source control, and then I click in this, and I do a branch out process, one of the things that it tells me is the new workspace may have different security settings than the current one, especially the security ones like uh, I forgot the name. The one for the private endpoints. I forgot the feature name. But yeah, it doesn't have the same configuration. So you might need to redo some of that.
Okay. Thank you so much, Edinson. Then there's
Happy to
another
take another
one.
one.
Yep. Then there's another one that came from Let's Grow Together with Amit. Do we have any calculator where I can define my old Azure data factory and other things, and it translate into Fabric associated and suggest to which CU we should go with?
Right. Not what we're talking about, but it's a really interesting question. All right. I've seen some calculators, but I'll be honest, I don't have the answer for that. I'm happy if you ping me offline to look for it and share what I know exists out there. But I do have some colleagues that have been working in some calculators to do something to what you're asking in here, but I just don't have the link at hand. All right.
Thank you so much, Edinson.
All right.
Do you
So
want to
now
take another question or you want to go
let's
ahead?
have a look at the test workspace first. Right? So test workspace, you can see notebook one is now here. And then again, if I click in my pipeline, I have the weight as well. So it's now a matter of, now that I have it in tests, right, for you to start doing your tests, maybe some manual testing, or ideally, and this is where we can things can get interesting, right? Because remember, so this is all of this is based in YAML, right? So whatever I go ahead and sorry, I'm gonna have to make this a little bit smaller. So whatever I write in here in my YAML pipeline, I'm going to uncomment all of my other stuff. If I remember, yes, I did remember. All right, so I can just go ahead and really create more stages, right? And one of those stages, for example, could be, well, the fact is, after I do my deployment, I need to seed some data, right? So I need to bring the data in. So I might want, as part of my deployment pipeline, I want to execute a pipeline, right? So the pipeline that we were just working on, I want to automatically execute that, right? So this is exactly what I have in here. And for this one, I'm using the other utility that I've mentioned, that is the Fabric CLI. So I've installed the Fabric CLI, and then I told it, hey, I want you to go and execute this API ingestion pipeline. Go and execute it. All right. I can also do repair of a semantic model, right? Especially when you're using semantic models that are using Direct Lake. The when you move from one workspace to the other, there is not an easy way to parameterize that, right? So what I've ended up had to have to do is I do the movement for the semantic model that is using Direct Lake, and then I repair the connection afterwards, right? I go ahead and repair the connection for that semantic model through Python as well, basically. So Python functions. I also want to do a deployment for the warehouse schema, right? Because Fabric CI/CD, although it moves the warehouse schema, right, it moves it as a file. It does not deploy it, right? It doesn't do the deployment of the actual files on the SQL project, because I haven't shown you this, but in the actually, if I just come here, in a warehouse, I have the SQL project, right? Now, this can be compiled and then published. I can publish that schema, but the Fabric CI/CD library, at least not today, doesn't do that. So I probably will need to do that. So I have a few stages for that. I will go ahead, I will build the DAG and then after I build the DAG I'll do and go and deploy that DAG using the SQL package utility. So if you use SQL Server before, it's most likely that you know this utility, right? So, and this is, we can make a lot more things in here. So maybe for the test one, I decide, no, let me introduce some automated testing on this. I'm gonna create some tests through PyTest that make sure that all of my logic from bronze to silver and from silver to gold is all tested automatically, so that whenever somebody makes a change, I need to make sure that those changes pass through the test, right? So, and this is the goodness about YAML and doing it this way, all right? Because at this moment, your imagination is a limit, all right, on what you can do in here. So I'm just going to publish all of this, and then just so you can see it in working. But yeah, happy to take any other questions now.
Thank you so much, Edinson. Yes, we do have a few more questions that have come through. So the one question that came from one user is like, is it possible to get these sample reference files that he
Um,
posts?
yes, so I actually already have published some of these in the Fabric Toolbox.
Okay.
Um, so it's actually in a few places. So you can probably find it in the Fabric Toolbox. There's also, if you look for Microsoft Fabric CI/CD, there is a kind of end-to-end tutorial as well, quite similar to what I'm doing right now. Um, and you can, it's also going to be in there. So this tutorial CI/CD with the Fabric CI/CD library, you can follow this as well, and it's going to be quite similar, right? In the Fabric Toolbox, in accelerators, in the under CI/CD, I do have this deployment, Git-based deployments with SQL project schemas, all right? So this is where, when if you wanted to also do the deployment of the data warehouses schemas, for example. So yeah, I
Thank you
recommend
so
you to go
much.
to these links.
Yeah, I just pasted one link in the chat from the Microsoft Learn path that Edinson just showed, where there are two tutorials. So hopefully it helps them. And yeah, I do see in the chat like Kevin Chand has got a good series of blog posts on all the Git elements. So definitely go and check his blog post there, Kevin Chand. I'll try to post the link of his blog website there, so you all can refer it. He's one of the very active community member who keeps on posting stuff on CI/CD in Fabric. So definitely go and check that out. Um, do you want to take another question, Edinson, now, or do
Happy
you
to.
want to
Yeah,
rush?
yeah, go for it.
Okay, okay. Okay, so there's one more question that came from Jake Duty. He's asking, what are the advantages of using the new experimental feature using the bulk APIs? Just few API calls or anything else?
All right, so you're talking about the new bulk API feature that was released recently. I'll be honest, I haven't used it. All right, so I, I don't think I have any advice for you on that one. Right? Happy to maybe use it later, and then if you ping me on LinkedIn, I'll give you my thoughts once I do it.
Thank you so much, Edinson. Okay, we can go to the next question. Another question comes from Rob Carroll. He's asking, any plans to support other Git providers like GitLab?
Good question, Rob. Yeah. I don't know if I'm honest. It is something that I keep hearing. All right. Um, I haven't heard anything in the roadmap today. Right. So I'll refrain from that one. If I hear anything, I'm happy to ping you.
Thank you so much, Edinson. Thank you so much. And then one last question that we have has come from Mutada Ahmed. And he's asking, is this approach better than connecting the dev workspace to a repo dev branch and doing a pull? I know Fabric
Yes.
CI/CD makes this more dynamic with configurations, but is there any other trade-offs?
So absolutely, and the main reason for me to do it is because just doing a Git sync connection, you won't have parameterization, and that's just a big thing. So because if you're not able to parameterize, it's gonna involve a lot of manual labor, and that's what we're trying to get away from, right? So we don't want to do anything manual. So that's the main reason why that I would prefer to stick using Fabric CI/CD than doing the Git enable approach.
Okay, thank you so much. Then we have got two more questions, and I think then we will kind of wrap up maybe. So one more question that has come from Olatunde Adikola. What happens to the feature workspace after merging to release? Do you clean it up?
Yeah, nothing happens automatically. You will have to clean it up manually.
Thank you so much, Edinson. And one last question that has come from James Hayward. Are you able to clarify when IDs are automatically replaced during deployment, that is workspace IDs, and when you would need to manually code in parameterization in your YML file?
Yeah. So it it depends. So there are some of there is something within the Fabric CI/CD that is called, I forgot the name, but it picks up some of the IDs automatically, but it doesn't do it for everything. It only does it for, I believe, for lake houses, and I forgot the other one. I can post that later, right? But I would say pretty much you will always have to come and create this parameter file, right? Well, to be honest, you have two options, right? I use this just because I've been using it for a while, right? And this gives me the ability to parameterize absolutely anything that I want. For example, schedules, right? So something that I hear a lot from my customers is, all right, so I have this data pipeline, right? But in development, it should run at, I don't know, 10 a.m. in the morning. But in test, it should run at 4 p.m. And in production, it should run at 11 p.m., right? But we know that the schedules are actually built in with the parameter. So actually it's a schema. It's part of the schema of the pipeline. So it's going to be part here of these files, right? It's actually going to be another file called .schedules. If I just stick with that, right, that that metadata is going to travel across all of my environments, and then it's gonna have to go and manually change that, right? Which is not what I want, right? I don't want to do anything manual. With this parameter file, I can actually do the parameterization, right? And say, hey, if you find this value in development, it should be this, in test should be that. And so I can change the schedule from this. So that's what I like the parameter.yml file, because it gives me a lot of extensibility. But in reality, this is not the only way. Why? Because I could as easily just use a variable library, right? So if I come in here, and I think this is, yeah, it's just almost ready to be done for today. I could just create a variable library in my workspace that will also travel as I do the deployment from environment to environment. And then I use the variable library to do that parameterization, all right? To say, hey, if you find this workspace, use the workspace ID in development is this, and the test one is here, and the development and the prod one is here. And you can also do it for item references. You can do it for connection references as well. It's something in preview as well. You can do string parameterization as well. So uh, that's the other way of doing it. So those are the two ways that you can do this. And the good thing about the variable library is that it's all in Fabric, so it's UI based rather than you having to open PS Code if you're not used to it and doing the parameter file.
Thank you so much, Edinson. Um, I think we don't have any more questions. Uh, yeah, looks like we have covered all the questions as well. So thank you so much, Edinson, because this topic is very much interesting, especially when it comes to CI/CD in Fabric, which is really important, right, when you work in a team. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with our user group, because this has been an amazing session.
No
Thank you
worries at
so
all.
much, Edinson. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for today's session. And please stay hydrated and stay healthy. The weather is really hot, so make sure you stay hydrated all the time. So thank you so much, everyone. And watch out for the next time, for the next session that we're going to bring for you. So definitely look forward to having you all on the user group in next few weeks. Thank you, everyone. Have a great time. Good evening, good day, whatever time zone you're joining from. Thank you, everyone.